Why should a man pay everything in a relationship? In my last video, I advocated for men to pay for everything in a romantic relationship. It may sound old-fashioned, but there's truth to it, and it's not just a stereotype. In this video, I'll explain what the psychological background is, where the limits are, and how to avoid making it a stereotype. This topic is primarily about a deeper understanding of male and female energies. In the following explanations, I will dive into these male and female characteristics. It may seem abstract at first, but you don't have to understand everything right away. You can simply listen for now. I will also provide some practical examples to illustrate the points. But now to the topic of what these two poles of femininity and masculinity are. The male principle is associated with reason. Through logical thinking, a man can set a goal that is so logical to him that he wants to achieve it as efficiently as possible, with an incredible focus. Imagine a mountaineer who keeps climbing higher until he reaches the summit, or imagine a businessman who wants to make bigger and bigger deals until he becomes rich and can afford anything he wants. Challenging oneself and asserting oneself is a masculine energy. This means pushing limits, breaking old habits, achieving new things, and releasing adrenaline and new energy. That's why daredevil stunts are a typical part of growing up for boys. Some may find this overly cerebral. Control is also part of this. Men want to maintain control so that they can keep everything in check and know that everything is going according to the plan. Men are also doers. By doing, a man can achieve his goals. That's why we talk about a man of action. And this context, it is considered masculine to be active and to do sports. In order to stay awake, active and vital, men are always moving forward and away. In contrast, there is the female principle. The female energy is associated with intuition. It is not guided by logic, reason and the head, but by the heart and the feelings. This is in contrast to the male reason. Intuition is what is commonly known as gut feeling. As a man in a relationship with a woman, have you ever had the situation where you thought she was thinking and acting illogically? That's intuition at work, which can, will and should drive out a man's logic in certain legitimate situations. But I can tell you in advance that life is not always logical and intuition is just as correct as logic. If you think about this further, you can come to the logical conclusion that intuition can break logic, which is logical in itself, but difficult for logic to understand. And conversely, a woman who acts intuitively feels that the man's logic is only correct and logical if it is in line with the female intuition. Intuition means loss of control, because you can't plan anything and can't hold onto a plan. So there is no control over a plan. This way of being and acting means surrender. Surrender in turn requires trust that the person to whom the woman surrenders will handle her correctly. Because at the moment of surrender, the woman has no control over what is happening. She is essentially at the mercy of the doers. The femininity is therefore passive, it rests in itself and does nothing except receive what comes from the doer. You can imagine a woman who takes care of herself at home, looks at herself lovingly and comfortable, decorates her home and connects with the material, for example, her house, and feels comfortable in it. Female energy creates a sense of security and peace for a restful and comfortable home. It is currently a great misunderstanding, lack of knowledge, and a large unconsciousness about these two described energy poles that leads to confusion and errors in society. This confusion will be resolved and uncovered as best as possible in this video. We currently live in the Western civilization, mostly in a gender energy chaos, which must be cleaned up once and for all. It should be said in advance that the world is currently trying to be dominated by the male principle. First of all, the solution does not mean that women should not express male characteristics or that men should not also carry female energies within themselves. On the contrary, women should also be familiar with male energies, and men also should be able to carry the passive femininity within themselves. But it's about being aware of which energy are released and which energies should be used when, how and why. One of the misconceptions is that feminism today means that women should be financially responsible for everything in order to be emancipated. Otherwise, they would fall into a submissive dependency on a man. By adopting this attitude, she moves into the male energy sphere because she then earns money efficiently with reason. As a result, she loses more or less her femininity, which leads to a deficit. If society tells women that they should be emancipated, femininity is negatively evaluated by society because it should be suppressed by women so that they can live self-determined. If femininity is suppressed, it is missing in society and humanity becomes a reason-guided society. If we look closely, this type of woman is dependent on money for work employer, which leads to a kind of substitute dependency instead of dependency on a life partner. This confrontation and independence of women, of course, was necessary to free themselves from patriarchy, which had developed into a toxic male power construct in the 1950s. However, reason is only effective as long as it is in agreement with the female intuition. If reason is disconnected from intuition, it can lead to toxic masculinity, which can be cruel and angry in the extreme case. For example, in a war, because the heart remains shut off. We are now in the world's history again at a critical point where the mind takes over. The vocabulary of a Third World War is increasingly becoming a part of the media landscape and threatens to erupt at any time. I previously spoke about toxic and masculine power structures. On the other hand, there is the belief that men should not show femininity. Otherwise, they are not real men. In this context, one often hears the distinction between macho and softy. A macho is a man who is led by reason with clear goals in mind and a strategic thinker. A softie is a weak man who thinks and behaves more like a woman and cannot confidently face challenges. If you look at this phenomenon from a depth psychological perspective, it is basically the confrontation of a man with femininity. As a boy is born in a symbiosis with the mother, so that he can build trust in the world. Without this symbiosis, he would not be able to survive. He needs the breast and the security because he is small, weak, unprotected, and unaware. Gradually, he will discover the world and realize that he feels a desire, the masculine sense of independence. To meet this desire for freedom, he will want to reject all femininity, his mother, so that he can detach himself from the breast. If he were to remain in the symbiosis with his mother, he would not be able to achieve this independence, which is needed in order to successfully support his own family later. This desire from freedom ends where a man feels the limit of his rational side. These boundary experiences are very different. An example is a mountaineer who climbs such high and dangerous peaks until he realizes that he is standing on the brink, and after the fear seeks shelter again and finds it in the feminine side. Another limit can be when a man is so independent and alone that he has no compassion for other people. He is a heroic warrior and spills blood, or for example cannot help an old, wise, needy man due to lack of empathy. A man feels more or less consciously a basic fear of femininity, that is the fear of symbiosis, and thus a fear of not being able to be independent when he connects with a woman, and takes an emotional responsibility. Nevertheless, he feels cold and lonely without femininity in his life, and sooner or later seeks emotional attention. That is why he seeks his femininity when he connects with a woman. A grown man, a nature gentleman, or so-called wise man has learned to integrate femininity into his life by himself. He knows on the one hand that he needs femininity for his emotional well-being and does not push it away out of fear, but can achieve independence and live independently because he once pushed away femininity and learned to go out into the wild world and assert himself alone. Men live in a dilemma, or in this tension between freedom and symbiosis. On the one hand, there is the attempt to escape this dilemma when a man goes to a prostitute, for example. He tries to remain unbound by not entering into an emotional and only financial commitment with a woman, and still wants to experience femininity for a certain time. Here, the man comes up against his limits because he is not in an emotionally mutual relationship. This attempt at a solution, however, does not lead to the integration of femininity within oneself or to a balanced masculinity. I previously mentioned toxic and male constructs of power. As we are currently at the critical point in the world history where reason is taking over, the vocabulary of a third world war is increasingly appearing in the media landscape and threatens to outbreak at any time. We live in a world dominated by reason. The feminist movement led to self-determination because of oppression. However, today, the rejection of femininity leads to a dominance of reason in society, as many women also adopt male roles, or at least try to adopt them and carry strong male energies. This dominance of reason and rational logic is manifested in various symptoms. One expression of rationality can be seen in the pharmaceutical lobby. For example, in relation to vaccination and vaccination mandates. Vaccination is a rationalized medicine. However, medicine is generally a very individual matter. Doctors often try different medications on patients until the right medication is found that is individually tolerable. Rationally, vaccination protects all people more or less from the virus as it builds or activates an immune system in the body. Intuitively, every person would feel for themselves whether they need a vaccination or not. With general preventive medicine, trust in one's own immune system can be lost. With countless vaccine breakthroughs, the limits of reason were shown. But what is serious about the reasoning society is that a large minority who want to trust and follow their intuition have been overlooked. The corona crisis has fortunately, on the whole, come to a relatively mild conclusion. However, it has not yet led to a paradigm shift. On the contrary, vaccination is still being referred to as the successful savior despite all the breakthroughs. In the next crisis that will come, the intellect will probably take a harder stance from the beginning and intuition will be pushed even further away. I can imagine that in the next crisis there will be even more bloodshed if the intellect tries to assert itself and the intuition and feelings on a large minority are ignored. I can imagine that in the next crisis there will be even more bloodshed if the intellect tries to assert itself and the intuition and feelings of many, albeit only a large minority, are ignored. A lot of blood has already been shed in the NATO-Russia war in Ukraine. Intuition would seek peace and try to solve the real conflict. To find a solution, both parties need to come together. Further considerations on this can also be seen in the aforementioned upcoming video on the Ukraine conflict. A classic example is the cesarean section rate in Western civilized societies that are heavily guided by reason. A spontaneous or natural birth requires a high level of connection to the body and intuition. Women need time to open up. She must work with the baby to master the birth process over many hours. Emotions play a very important role here. You need to be able to listen to your body. It's an intuitive process. Although according to the WHO, only 10% of cesarean sections are medically indicated. The cesarean section rate in some countries is over 30 or even 40%. The cesarean section can be timed and planned down to a minute and completely rationalized. I don't want to talk about the pros and cons of spontaneous or cesarean birth now. Now back to the original question: why should a man be responsible for financial affairs? On the one hand, it takes away some of the woman's masculine side and she can focus on her feminine qualities. This can have various advantages. For example, when starting a family, it is important that the woman can focus on her femininity. If a woman has to deal with financial stress, in addition, this stress can lead to problems such as premature birth or milk blockage, etc. But if she has a clear head for her intuition, she can fully engage in the symbiosis with the baby. That is why I particularly recommend that at dating times you immerse yourself in gender roles with a healthy balance and sense of humor, of course, so that when you later want to start a family, you can already recognize important prerequisites. Another example of an advantage is if you want to be successful together with a clear division of roles and the right use of energy, one can achieve goals more efficiently. The two poles complement each other perfectly, assuming the man makes a career and the woman takes on the carrying role and supports the man mentally, emotionally, and emotionally. It is likely that the man will be more successful than without supportive female energy in the background. Conversely, the woman can relax and live her devotion and creativity. This is also the case with earning money. But be careful, it is not about work itself, it is about financial responsibility. Being female does not mean not working. It means having the freedom to choose what and how much to work. You give her this freedom as a man when you take full responsibility for taking care of the money. Women often take on many important tasks. They take care of social life, in a partnership or in a family. When it comes to bringing a gift to an invitation, it is often the woman who takes care of it. It starts with her thinking about such things, then getting and organizing the gifts, or thinking about birthdays. Furthermore, women are often expected to take particularly good care of themselves and make themselves beautiful for society. On the one hand, she has more time to invest. She goes for nail care, skin care, etc. And it also costs a lot of money. Another example is home decor. Often it is the woman who plans the home decor and takes responsibility for well-being in the home. So the man can support her in her femininity when he is responsible for the financial income again. If the woman can now freely choose whether she wants to realize a hobby or wants to get involved in a club or wants to build her own business, to what percentage she wants, then she can optimize her femininity. As a man, you feel empowered in your masculinity. You feel masculine because you have accomplished a challenge. You can be generous and focused on your job, make a career, and be successful. You feel masculine by providing your wife or family with a great infrastructure that in turn makes life easier and more beautiful. I'm talking about good, healthy food, a great house, high quality equipment such as a safe and modern car, or a great stroller for your baby, or a great trip that your wife wants to take to be inspired, whatever.